Hey everybody, it's the Recycled Mom, and welcome back to our Proverbs study from a mother's perspective. Just a reminder that this is a month-long study in the book of Proverbs, and there are several mom channels that are participating. And this is all hosted by the Ingrid Chronicles, and you can see a link to her channel as well as the entire playlist in the description box. And I do hope that you will go down and check the playlist and check out some of these other moms channels and the study on the Proverbs that we're offering, because it has been a huge blessing. And with that, we're going to dive into chapter 20. And if you look at the very first verse, it's like, bam! We start right off with something that is like a strong verse. And the verse is, wine is a mocker, strong drink is a brawler, and whoever is led away by it is not wise. This verse and this topic has just been a huge topic of discussion in the Christian community. And before I get into this, I just want to do a shameless self-plug for some of the things that I do. I have been a faith-based addictions counselor for over 12 years. And these are the topics that I deal with all the time. Alcohol, drugs, pornography, overeating, trauma, and recovering from trauma. It's based all on Jesus completely healing you from these addictions and temptations and creating a new person and giving you new desires in life. I have studied these kinds of passages at length with our addictions doctor that is on staff. And I have gone over and looked through, I have researched the Jewish customs, the history, the Hebrew, Greek, English translations of these words. And so this is something that I am really passionate about. And I'm also passionate about people properly viewing this topic and these scriptures in the proper context, because these things can get blown out of proportion to the point that it becomes the 11th commandment, thou shalt not drink. And that is not a commandment, just saying. When we're talking about things in the world and how would this apply into the world, why is this verse even here, right? Well, we need to be aware, okay? These are warnings. And so we need to be aware because the world romanticizes drinking. It romanticizes, it encourages the use of alcohol from practically every occasion, to weddings, parties, Sunday afternoon football games, the media advertising, and everybody makes it look like fun, it's harmless, it's desirable, it's hip or cool, It's no wonder that so many people are led astray, which is the second part of this verse. It says, whoever is led astray by it is not wise. The wise person is going to understand this, and they're going to not be led astray by all of the tempting ads or the peer pressure. It's a maturity that we would have, speaking as moms, it's a maturity that we would have, knowing that, yep, I see this and I'm not going to be led astray by this. Now, drunkenness is the sin. Having a glass of wine once or twice a year, once a week, that it's not a sin, because you are not breaking a law, and everything you're doing is legal if you're over 21 and you're not driving and you're in your home, and that's between you and God. You're not breaking any laws and you're not sinning, okay? The sin here, though, is drunkenness. That is the sin. And it is just as much of a sin as gluttony is. And both are indulgences of the body. We need to look at some verses. Drunkenness and gluttony are always paired together. Pretty much most of the time, they're always paired together. In our churches, or even in our Christian social circles and things like that, the one that's talked about the most is drunkenness and not gluttony. But when both of them are always together in the Bible, and both are issues and indulgences of the body. And if we're going to talk about drunkenness, you better be doing the same thing for the glutton. I will never forget going to one of my biblical counseling training sessions, and the speaker, he was standing up in the front of the church, and he came down out of, from the pulpit and came down into the audience First of all, he questioned us and said, what are the top 3 addictions in the United States? And if you were like me, I answered, cigarettes, which was my top answer, and alcohol was another one, and then pornography. I was naming, I'm like, oh, I'm going to get these all right. I was completely off. They didn't even make the top 10. The top 3 addictions in the United States are caffeine, sugar, and greasy food. And let me tell you, I had the top 2 at the time. I had the top 2 right in my coffee cup. I had coffee with a ton of sugar in it. A long time ago, I would drink a whole pot of coffee all by myself and put that sugar in there. And let me tell you, I became rotund. But if we're going to be addressing one, we need to be addressing the other, okay? And so he said to pastors, we spend all this time standing behind our pulpit, preaching about drunkenness and pornography, and waving a greasy pork chop at him the whole time. And that really got me, because that was so true, is that we're always focusing on the one and not the other, and both are issues of the body. So food and drink are not sinful in and of themselves, but the misuse of them is sin. The overindulgence is the sin. So if we were to just jump over to Proverbs 23, and we were to look at verses 20 and 21, okay? And actually, let's look at 19 through 21. We see, hear, my son, and be wise, and guide your heart in the way. Do not mix with wine bibbers. These are people that drink a lot of wine. And I always pictured them as someone sitting at the bar with a bib on, drinking wine, and it was dripping on their bib. But that's not the actual thing here. It kind of makes me laugh when I think about it. Wine bibbers, people who drink a lot of wine, people who tarry at the wine, you'll see that in the Bible. Or with gluttonous eaters of meat. For the drunkard and the glutton will come to poverty. What we can see here is that we see drunkard and glutton both in the verse together, and they will both come to poverty. This is what will happen when you indulge. You come to poverty. You become physically of a physical poverty, if you will. You will lack health, and you will lack your faculties and things like that. We need to see that these are both together, okay? If you're going to talk about the one, you need to talk about the other, okay? And there are so many people that are overeating here in America. We have a bad diet here in the western part of the world. You know what? Y'all should watch Wall-E. If you haven't, it's been a long time since I've watched it, but this reminds me of that. Because the humans were trashing Earth so bad, and they were up in this big spaceship, and they were going to stay up there until the Earth regenerated itself. But while they were up there, it was all like, buy more, indulge more. We were watching, we're lazy. We move around these little ships, and they had no muscle tone, eating too much. They didn't even realize. They were just so consumed with everything that was just coming at them like this. They were like, oh, can I say brainwashed? I hate to use that word, but in a sense, they had just lost focus. And that's kind of what I see here. They came to poverty. And so anyway, watch Wall-E. In Philippians 3:19, we see that whose end is destruction, whose God is their belly. Food can become an obsession. We have lots of food disorders, from everything from binging, purging, to anorexia, starving ourselves, that kind of thing. We have it all. And if we can also look at Deuteronomy 21:20, and it says, and they shall say to the elders of his city, this son of ours is stubborn and rebellious. He will not obey your voice. He is a glutton and a drunkard. And so this verse is talking about a rebellious society being an extension of a rebellious family. And so they're talking here about disobedience in the home, and you had elders of the city coming to you and talking to you about your son being rebellious, and they called him a glutton and a drunkard. Okay, and so he was overindulging. He was rebellious. And so someone who is a glutton and a drunkard, they are indulging the desires of their body. And so this is a heart issue. It's a heart issue, using things of God. Did you catch that? Things of God in an inappropriate way. Okay, things like pornography. They're using something that is beautifully designed by God and meant to be for marriage is horribly tainted and twisted. And then there's the things of God. There's food, right? And food is not sinful all there by itself, but your misuse of the food is, okay? And they're using these as examples to show you in your heart, okay? And then the fruit of the vine, grapes being into wine, it's not sinful in and of itself. It is your misuse of it. So when we use things of God in an inappropriate way, this is feeding an inner issue, an appetite, and that causes you to overindulge and not be temperate, not being in control in all things. You're eating, you're drinking, your body, your thoughts, even sex and marriage. There's issues there too, just saying. And so isn't it interesting if we look back all the way to Genesis and Adam and Eve, Satan used food to bring about the first sin of man. Isn't that interesting? He used food and Eve was deceived. Adam chose, boom, we were plunged into sin. And yes, this does lead to sin. It's not the food that is the sinful. It's not the thing that is sinful. It was the heart decision to turn away from God. And these things around us, all of these things in the world that are around us, have the potential to turn us away from God. And my pastor was just saying this morning,
you see, anything we place before the Lord Jesus Christ in our lives becomes a functional idol to us. We may not pray to it. We may not bow down to it. We may not sing songs to it. But if it comes before Jesus in our lives, it is a god of our own making.
I just want to say that this is, we do have many warnings in the Bible about the alcohol and wine, and almost all of them you'll find are in Proverbs. And I think we have these here as a reminder of how quickly things can change in our body if we are not careful and we are not wise, because alcohol is quick, okay? Which is why there are so many warnings against it, and especially for leaders, kings, those types of people. It is not wise because, your nation may be going to war at a minute's notice, and here you are sitting there drinking, now you're drunk, and how are you supposed to make decisions? Alcohol is very quick to affect your body, and before you know it, you may have had too much. That is how we can be led astray and how we can be deceived into thinking, oh, I got this under control. Because, one drink does alter your senses. You probably not inebriated, but one does, and it will relax you. And for someone who has to be a leader of a country, so like a president of a country or a king back in the Bible days here, a king needed to be ready at a moment's notice for whatever, and to be able to lead properly, speak properly, judge properly, those things. He had to be at 100% full faculties and 100% full of the Holy Spirit. And then food doesn't affect us quite as fast. Okay, it takes a little while for the food to get into our bodies, and then the pounds end up appearing and the fat appears around our waists, all right? But both food and alcohol both affect the same parts of our brain the same way, the same pleasure centers of our brain the same way. And I need to stop here because I will just go on and on and on and on. We haven't even gotten to verse 3 yet. Verse 3, it is honorable for a man to stop striving, since any fool can start a quarrel. So what is strive? What is striving? Strife. Strife is discord, bitter conflict, lack of harmony, heated dissension, violence. Strife is always accompanied by pride and not willing to cooperate in talking it out. All right, and so if a man is going to stop striving, it's honorable. Otherwise, he's going to be a fool for keeping the quarrel going, right? We see this kind of thing all the time in politics, families, in nations, in churches. Why does it keep happening? Why does it keep going? Why does the striving and the quarreling keep happening? Because the difference of opinion is becoming the priority versus the actual issue at hand. Is conflict bad? No. Sometimes we need conflict to bring about change and growth. You notice in your marriages or in your home, and things start rubbing a little bit, And so, okay, there's tension here. So let's look at this, okay? Don't be afraid of conflict or having and I quote, having an argument, but you're arguing, an opinion or a point. Conflict will bring about growth and change if you have the attitude of listening, right? And trying to figure out where the other person is coming from. Verse 5, counsel in the heart of man is like deep water, but a man of understanding will draw it out. I love this verse. We're talking about counsel. We need good counsel for our safety, our success, our in our Christian growth and in homeschooling and parenting and being a wife and all these things. And so here we have counsel compared to deep water. And it's more like a well. So if you've ever gotten water from a well, you do have to get the bucket down in there, or if you've gotten it from a river or a stream, you have to get the bucket down in there and draw it out. And that is what it is like with a person. Good counsel, it's drawing out the things from the deep, okay? And good counsel will do that. Are we willing to go down that deep and get the deep wisdom and counsel, or will we just go for something easier? You just want to skim the top of the surface? Sometimes when you get down into the bottom of the well, the water is colder. And so, do you want that good water from the bottom and get way down in there, or do you want to do the easy route and just grab the stuff off the surface? Verses 6 through 11, I see focusing on integrity. There's a saying that I've heard: your talk talks, your walk talks, but your walk talks louder than your talk talks. So we can see that walking in integrity speaks louder than do as I say, not as I do. I would like to point out verses 10 and 23 together is talking about dishonest scales and measures. And the proverb I did back, Proverbs 7, was talking about, having honest scales, just scales and weights. And so here in verse 10, we see diverse weights and diverse measures. They are both alike an abomination. The lesson here is that the Lord, it's an abomination to the Lord to have unjust measures. You measure one thing one way and one thing another way, and that's not right and that's not fair. That's the diverse weights and measures. We want honest weights and measures. And in verse 23, we also see, again, it repeats, diverse weights are an abomination to the Lord and dishonest scales are not good. Okay, so we see these two verses. If we look at Deuteronomy 25, verses 13 through 15, you shall not have in your bag differing weights, a heavy and a light. You shall not have in your house differing measures, a large and a small. You shall have a perfect and just weight, a perfect and just measure. We need to have a perfect weight and a just weight, an equal weight and measure, if you will. When we need to have these in our house, in our life, we have to realize that we're all imperfect people. What is happening is that we are measuring how Christian others are by what church they go to, by what homeschool curriculum they're using. How about what Bible they use, what restaurant they eat at or don't eat at, what store they shop at or don't shop at. I'm stepping on toes here. How long someone's skirt is, or whether they're wearing sleeves on their shirts. There's a saying that I have heard a lot, and it was called the ground is level at the cross. Okay, and the cross is where the sin of the world was placed on Jesus, and that weight of the sin and the weight of the cross. Let's remember that the weight of sin is the same for everyone, and God is the one with the scale. So this is your sin, and God has the scale. Would you want him using different weights to measure your sin against my sin? We would want him to measure us with the same weight. And he does. That's Jesus. And Jesus did all of that for us. There's a lot of good little nuggets in here, but I'm actually going to skip over all the way to verse 30. Verse 30 says, blows that hurt cleanse away evil, as do stripes the inner depths of the heart. This is discipline that teaches the heart, not abuse. It's discipline that teaches the heart. Firm, wise punishment is far less painful than an unrestrained will or just downright rebellion. And what about you? I mean, we talk about disciplining our kids, but mom, you need discipline and correction as well. And how do you respond? Do you learn the hard way? These verses all, I think, especially in the book of Proverbs, in this chapter though, especially, I think we're really talking about deep heart issues. The well, getting to the depths of the heart and draw out that understanding. Disciplining our children, which is getting to the heart. Don't just try to correct the outward behavior to get your child to behave properly. It is a heart issue. Get to the heart. And especially, and going all the way back to the beginning with the drunkard, with drunkenness and gluttony. Okay, it is a heart issue. Think all the way back to Adam and Eve. When Satan came and tempted in the garden, he got to their heart. He used food, which is amazing. He used food to speak to their heart, okay? And so the bigger issue here is not all these other little things that we talked about that can get controversial. Pay attention to the bigger issue, which is the heart. My heart's desire for you is that you get to the heart issue of your matters. So until the next proverb, peace, love, healing, y'all.